Good morning, everybody, from the Gold Coast of Australia, and we're back with another episode of the Fearless Training Raw Knowledge Podcast with myself, Alex Connor, your host. And it is a public holiday here, once again in Australia, because we have many. It's not a bad thing. And just to rub salt in the wound, once again it is blue skies and very sunny. So if you're wondering why it's such a popular place to live, Google it, have a look at the weather, you'll find out why. Anyway, I've got a very special guest today, whom I'm going to have a discussion with. This one's been on the cards for a while. It is a mammoth of an episode, just a heads up. The content that I produce on my podcast is long form. I've had a few questions recently asking, some of your podcasts are quite long. Yes, they are. That is the whole point of them. The podcast is a long form content, or it is in my realm. We have got a couple of escapades or projects, if you like, that we're going to do where we have shorter, more rapid fire Q&As on specific subjects with given peers and practitioners. However, for the most part, the long form content is what I like to do, because unlike the YouTube and the Instagram posts, etc., where you can't really spend a whole lot of time because you've only got, a limitation of a certain amount of words, or whether it's a certain amount of seconds to get something across, and for me it can be quite hard to give a full picture. The podcast is great because you can actually sit down, have a conversation, not rush. For the listener, pop it on in the car, pop it on in the gym, get your earphones in, have a listen, and you can go over all the grey areas, and you can look in between the nooks and crannies a little bit more, and we can really start to unpack a lot of great subjects. And I think that's often where you find a lot of the gold. It's not always in the quick conversations. A lot of the time it's by having, a back and forth with someone and really digging deep within it. So before we crack on with my guest, I mentioned last week about the Academy, and that is obviously up very, very soon. For those of you who have seen it, there was a bit of a snapshot and a glimpse of the website earlier this week that we put live, just to give you a bit of a sneak peek, if you like. So that's really exciting, so stay tuned. But if you head over to that landing page now, that's fearlesstrainingunited.com, and once again that link is in the show notes or in the description wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. You can head over and put your email in and be the first one to get notified when the Academy is launched by the end of this month. And that, once again, is going to be a community, a place of unparalleled knowledge, which is focused at educating you in the realms of training, nutrition, and lifestyle collectively. Once again, the theme of the podcast, the theme of what I do, so you can approach and improve your own lifestyle and training via getting these takeaway key principles and underlying elements and, put them into real life practice so you can get the results that you want without all of the BS. And we're going to continue to add and improve that. There's always improvements to be made. I'm not saying it's the be all and end all, but it is of a standard. It is a high standard. And for those of you who don't have access to my coaching or professional coaching, this is definitely a great segue to get yourself involved and to get yourself on track and see if it's something that is for you, but also to actually start making progress towards your physique goals, your lifestyle goals, and creating good relationships with your body, your mind, food, etc., and in relation to other people, because it is my belief that health and relationships are your number one asset. And for me, that's my ethos, if you like. That's my foundation. I think if you've got your health and your relationships and everything that divulge within those two realms, everything else is just a bonus. Anyway, I digress. Back to my guest today. My guest is none other than Dr. Kori Propst. Now, Dr. Kori is the Wellness Director and Vice President of the Diet Doc LLC. Okay, so a couple of episodes ago now, I spoke with Dr. Joe Klemczewski, the founder. So Kori does work alongside Joe and within the company, and they do a lot of collaborations on their own channel as well. Once again, that's mentioned in the podcast. We link that in. So, Kori's quite a familiar voice and quite a prominent one within that realm, and that is how I first heard of Kori. I was really impressed with, the way she puts things across, the way she explains her information and what she actually does for people, and I think it's really important. And we're going to go into a lot of these topics today. We cover a variety of things, and, we go off on tangents. But once again, I think there's some really key information here, especially for those of you who want to really understand some of the mindsets from a psychological perspective that goes in to, improving the way you look and feel, not only from a, quote unquote general population standpoint, but for those of us who are taking it, a little bit further to the physique realms and beyond. So a little bit about Kori, and again, I'm going to put her bio in the description so you can read a little bit more and follow the links if you want to find out more about her and what she does. I highly recommend you do so. She's a very, very talented individual, and she's able to help a lot of people. So, she's earned a bachelor's degree in exercise physiology, a master of science in counseling, and a doctorate in health and psychology and behavioral medicine. So Kori specializes in mindset, eating psychology, nutrition, and body image, incorporating mindfulness training, mind-body integration, emotional agility, acceptance, and commitment therapy, intuitive eating, mindset and motivational science, and a peak performance coaching mindset and acumen. Now, her primary mission is to guide women towards a nourishing, healing, and compassionate relationship with their bodies and food. And again, that is a really, really specific key topic, which we do go over in this podcast. And for those of you who are listening, whether you're male or female, I'm sure you can kind of empathize with a female in your life, or if you are obviously competing as a female, some of those pitfalls and mindsets that you go through. And I'm really passionate about helping people create better relationships with food myself, but especially women, because there's a lot of misconceptions, about starving themselves, or, if I put on weight, it's fat, and it's not quite the case. So we kind of go through and unpack a lot of the psychology, which is very interesting. And one of the things that Kori does really well is by simplifying the process and giving us some actual real life examples and key takeaways with which you can apply yourself. And I think it's really good to see that human element side of it and understand how it's not as complicated as you think once you understand something, and that you just have to start somewhere and then, continue that process if you like. So Kori herself, she practices what she preaches. She's one of a few athletes who've earned professional status in all three divisions of bodybuilding, figure and fit body within the World Natural Bodybuilding Federation. And she's currently spending a lot of time on the bike, which we briefly touch on as well. So she's into the road cycling. But again, a multitude of things. Kori likes to be active. And she has also published in the Journal of Nutrition and various community magazines. And she also serves on the advisory board for Oxygen Women's Fitness magazine, and is a contributing writer for the Ultra Fitness magazine, and is an avid blog writer. So there's lots of things to go over in this episode, and Kori, again, she's sort of a Swiss Army knife, if you like, of information, and definitely a wealth of knowledge in this realm. It was a fantastic conversation. Again, we connected on a lot of points, and we went off on a lot of tangents. So hang in there on this one, sit back, enjoy, relax. You may have to listen to this over a couple of time bouts, but it is well worth it. So without further ado, everybody, until next time, enjoy this latest conversation between myself and Dr. Kori Propst. Kori, welcome to the Raw Knowledge Podcast. Thank you for making the time. How are you this afternoon in your part of the world, morning in my part of the world?
Yes, that took a little bit of coordination, didn't it? Yeah. We've only been talking about this for like 2 months. So I'm great. Thank you. And I'm happy to be here and excited about our conversation. Yeah. It's beautiful in my part of the world right now. As you can see, I'm wearing a tank top.
I was just going to say, it looks like you've got some decent sunlight and vitamin D shining through an onset window there.
I very much do. Yes.
There you go. This is good. So Gold Coast, and whereabouts? You're in the LA time zone, aren't you?
I'm on the West Coast. So I am in the San Diego area of California. I live a little bit more inland, so I cannot see the coast or the sea, but I'm close to it. So
there you go. That's comforting. San Diego, I must admit, it's actually, I have been there very briefly.
You have?
Briefly, yeah. When we were going to, or when we were looking at living in New Zealand, my parents, when I was young, went to the Sea World, as you do, right? So I didn't see all the probably the best. But people often say that San Diego is got a similar climate to the Gold Coast, and it's one of the better places to live in terms of weather in the United States.
That's exactly right. Yes.
There you go.
Because you can be outside at any time and be fairly comfortable.
That's a luxury that a lot of people in the world don't have, and I think it's
exactly
granted sometimes.
Yes, and now that I am into an outdoor sport, that works really well.
yeah, 100%. It goes hand in hand. Well, Kori, let's start as we always do. Give the audience a bit of a rundown. Tell us about you, your role, what you do specifically, what you're passionate about.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So, Dr. Kori Propst, I am a health psychologist. I am the wellness director and vice president for the Diet Doc LLC. And we provide nutritional support and coaching services to the general population. We also have a competition preparation division of our company. And what I do primarily is I manage the general population nutrition program, and I have the mental edge and peak performance division of our company as well. So I provide coaching and consulting to a lot of athletes who come my way, who are struggling with their nutrition, struggling with body image, want to really up their game in terms of their mindset and their motivation. I've also created curriculum for mindset and motivation specific coaches within our company who can provide those services as well. So that's it in a nutshell.
I like it. No, it's concise and it's to the point. This is good. Well, so to springboard off that, Kori, can you give us some, to get the ball rolling, some real life examples and sort of how you implement that knowledge and sort of how you facilitate that role?
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with maybe the Mental Edge program that I have created and provide services for. Get a lot of physique competitors coming my way who often are struggling with primarily binge eating. And when I have to kind of give a little bit of research in regards to binge eating, because when we look at what's causing that sort of behavior, we understand that binge eating behaviors are a restrictive eating disorder. And sometimes it doesn't make much sense to people because binge eating is consuming a copious amount of food in a short period of time. That's a very short definition of it. But it occurs because of dieting behavior and food restriction. So when I'm working with individuals like this, of course, we're going to focus on food, and we're typically going to work from a place of eating adequately, because if we're not, then I don't want to say never, but we're shooting ourselves in the foot the entire time that we're working together. Because if they're in a place of restriction, their bodies biologically are moving them in and urging them to and creating a drive to food. When you look at competitive bodybuilders or physique athletes, what you find a lot of times, and it's not surprising, is a very strong preoccupation with food. It makes sense, right? I mean, this is literally a dieting competition to get as lean as you possibly can. It's an extreme sport. And we need to treat it as such. And I don't think that a lot of coaches do. It's an extremely difficult sport in terms of our emotional health and our psychological health and our mental health. And these are aspects of it that are rarely taken into consideration and handled with care by a lot of coaches. It's just nutrition. Eat this. Here are your macros. And we can't we can't work with clients like that if we expect them to be, I keep using the word healthy, but have a quality of life and a sense of well-being and vitality, and to move into the other areas of their life feeling energized and to have a sense of zest. But when you look at all of the different components, biology specifically, my clients are coming to me with this behavior that they want to get rid of and that they feel out of control around, and that they're looking at as a personal deficit. They're looking at as there being something wrong with them, something they need to be able to control. And the first step in working with them as we're collaborating is for me to educate them on what actually is a binge and how the body is trying to protect them. This isn't their body defying them or fighting them, or, they feel like their bodies are betraying them in many ways. No, the body is actually trying to save them from starving.
Yeah.
And so, when they can look at it from that perspective, that this is protective. No, it doesn't feel good because you feel terrible after a binge, not only emotionally, but physically. You're just so full. It's very, very uncomfortable. And the one thing you typically want to do is get rid of that. But here's the thing with that. If you get rid of it, and there are many ways to do that, they're all unhealthy. What it leads to, again, is another period of restriction, right?
Yes.
So now we're starting the cycle all over again. And so oftentimes it's helping these individuals too, if that's part of the problem, is the getting rid of it, the compensatory behaviors, is to help them practice not getting rid of it. Even if there is a binge, it's progress if they choose and can choose another strategy. Compassion, for example. I teach self-compassion. There are 3 components to it. So that's another, you asked about strategies.
Yes.
That's another concept that I teach and that they begin practicing and putting into place. But we typically, if they put themselves in another place of restriction, they're just setting themselves up again for the next binge.
Yes.
And with binge eating too, a lot of times it occurs because we're either in a period of restriction or we have thoughts about binging and we binge to get rid of the thought. A lot of times it's not because because binge eating can still occur once food is adequate.
Correct.
And a lot of times it's because it's become habitual over a long period of time. But when thoughts come up, and another concept or strategy that I teach, Alex, is mindfulness. And that means a non-judgmental awareness of the thoughts and the stories that the mind tells and the emotions that are produced in the body, and understanding them to be energy shifts instead of a story about what's happening or what's bad or what's wrong or what needs to be avoided or pushed away or numbed, for example, with binge eating. But when a thought pops up and is like, you need to go eat, you should go eat, or you shouldn't be doing this, which is a restrictive thought. And the mind and body don't know the difference between physical restriction and mental restriction. So mental restriction being, you shouldn't be eating this, you'll get back on track after this, you cannot eat tomorrow, you could just go do 3 more hours of exercise. That's mental restriction. Or that's a bad food, that's an off-limits food. Mental restriction. Physical restriction is physically not consuming food. Body doesn't know the difference. It's all restriction. And so it puts them biologically back into a place of protection. And the drive to eat is going to be there. So, but even if they're eating adequately and they've been binging for a long period of time and it's become habitual, they may have the thought, like I have a client right now who we're working on eating adequately. She's doing it most of the time. But at 4 p.m. in the afternoon was her binge period.
Right.
She got used to doing that. It's become habitual. It's become automatic. Even now eating adequately, she's still in this place where the thoughts start coming up and the drive to eat is there. And so what we're working on is noticing the thought. And what we actually did today, I just had the session prior to, us getting on this call, is I asked her, like, what's the thought? And she has this, she has some, I said, I want you to pretend like you're reading a book. Mm-hmm. What are the words on the page? Because part of this is get it out of you. Let's create some distance between, you and this thought, because the thought isn't you. It's a string of words. That's all it is. And right now she believes it. So the thought says something, she believes it, so she goes and binges.
Yeah.
Get it out on the page. What is it? And she said it. She's like, the thought today was, I think I have this event she had this event that she's planning for. And if I drink, I'm going to get fat and get very ugly. Like, so we're extracting the words from the mind. Mm-hmm. We're getting them out on this piece of paper in this book. And I said, okay, it's on the page. You just read it in this novel, the story. The mind makes a story. Now it's right here in front of you. What do you want to do with it? She's like, well, I can turn the page. I'm like, yeah, you absolutely can. You have to read it. Turn the page and see what's on the next one. I'm like, what else can you do with it? She's like, well, I guess I could just put the book down. I'm like, there's another option. Yeah, there are other books to read. Okay. And so that led into, all right, what do the other books say? So there's this concept, and I want to get back to the book, because she had other ways of managing it too. She's like, I could rip out the page. Yes. I'm like, yeah, you could. You could rip it out, crumble it up and throw it away. You could rip it out and you could burn it. You could actually write it down on a piece of paper yourself, download it, have a brain dump, and burn it.
Interesting.
Yeah, right? Now, what was I just saying? I completely had a brain fart.
So you were telling us about, you asked the client to write the thought down that she was having and get it out.
Yeah. So, there was that. Like, I had an offshoot. I had a tributary from that river we were rafting down, Alex. I don't know what it was, but...
You're only human. It happens.
Thank you. I didn't even have a concussion from my accident. So that's another strategy, and that's part of mindfulness, is helping a client to understand that the stories that the thoughts tell are not truth. Oftentimes they lie. Yes. They're blatant lies.
Yes, very much.
And to learn different strategies for managing them, because there are different things we can do with those thoughts. We can the best thing is to first acknowledge it. Okay, I see you. I hear you. Like, I know you're there, and you're probably going to pop up a million times today. I get it. But then first always acknowledge, because what we resist and push back against, guess what? It pushes back harder. Yeah. So thoughts are the same way. If we ignore it, it's probably, it's going to be like, hey, you're not listening, right?
Yeah.
Someone comes to the door. Take a kid. Daddy, pulling on the pant leg.
Yeah.
Daddy. You're not doing anything. You're not acknowledging me. Daddy. Pretty soon the kid is going to be like, Daddy! Right?
Gets more and more.
Until you finally look down and you're like, what? We need to acknowledge it. A thought or an emotion. We've got to acknowledge that it's there. Yeah. The other thing, here's another strategy. We did this today too. I'm going to play fear, because she said, She has a lot of fear, and that tends to push her into this anxiety place where she doesn't really know what to do with that sensation in her body. It's like listless, you know, it feels butterflyish in her stomach. She's just kind of pacey. In that moment, what she needs, and that's a question my clients learn to ask themselves, like, okay, fear is here. Mm-hmm. Identify it, acknowledge it. Fear is here. Mm-hmm. Now, what's the need here? Maybe I do need food, because listlessness can be a cue of hunger. Mm-hmm. It is for me. Like, if I'm like, I can't concentrate, you know, I'm just like antsy, sometimes it means I need to eat. So is the need get food and or something else at the same time? Okay, so that's one of the strategies. But with the fear, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be fear. I'm going to play fear. I'm going to be that emotion, and I want you to talk back to me. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you'd say. So I'm like, you are so stupid. Why do you think that strategy that you're implementing right now is even going to work? Give me a break. So I'm not being really nice. Fear is threatening. Yes. Okay, so I'm talking to her in a very threatening way, because that's just like what's going on in her head.
It's quite.
But I want to be outside of her, like create the distance and the space. Mm-hmm. So initially, she's like, she's backing. She's like, I don't know what to say. Like, she just felt blasted.
Yeah, intimidated.
There you go. That's what fear does to us. But what she's doing is she's believing it. Mm. Instead of talking back to it and countering it, she's believing it. And then she gives it the power. Instead of, and with some practice today and me kind of coaching her out. So, okay, here's Kori, here's fear. Kori now is saying, I'm like, what do you want fear to know? And she's like, then she starts talking to fear. I don't want to listen to you. I don't actually need to listen to you. And now she starts getting on a roll. What you're saying? You're hurtful. You're not in my service. You're not telling me anything that is in my best interest. I no longer am going to pay attention to you. Mm-hmm. And then, Kori, so why don't you tell fear what you're going to do instead? Well, I'm going to let you know that I know you're here, because I know that's important. Like, hey, I'm going to acknowledge you, but this is her talking to mm-hmm. fear. You need to be ready for me to respond to you in a different way than I ever have before. And it's going to look like this. Hi, I hear you. I'm choosing not to listen to you. You're not helpful to me. Bye. So she's coming up with the counter thoughts and words to use to manage the emotions that present themselves to her that are hurtful and harmful. And like you said, threatening. Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, and quite a dialogue it is there, Kori. And it's interesting to me when you and thank you for sharing that real life example, when you extrapolate it out. Mm-hmm. I think the first thing that comes to mind to me is mm-hmm. sometimes how simple a process can be to actually moving forward and making progress by using these strategies, by talking to someone, by mm-hmm. Role playing or whatever it might be, mm-hmm. where people, I think we often, like everything, we overcomplicate it and we think there must be a more elaborate solution mm-hmm. To the problem. And sometimes it is literally having a conversation, putting it down on paper. Again, I think a good point that you made, just to reiterate for the audience, acknowledgement. I believe that's a part of from what I understand, when you are trying to replace a habit, is the first process, because you have to acknowledge it, you have to recognize it, and then before you can start to replace it, right? Because as you said, that if you are
part of the acceptance piece,
because if you're restricting and you're restrictive, then you're pushing back and you're constantly trying to fight fire with fire, and that's going to really, really end in tears. Now you've got, obviously, we look at, you mentioned your comp prep athletes. That's more of I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's more of an acute stage for somebody coming out of comp prep, where they might have those that binge eating, or perhaps that's something that's highlighted if they've been predisposed to that habit. And then we've got people who are in a more chronic state, where again they're not necessarily at low body fat, but they still have this relationship to food. Do you find that you are, and I know this is individual, you're using similar strategies for these two demographics, if I could segregate them into those two? Or do you find that that they're always completely different, or is there a pattern, is what I'm trying to get at? Or is it just very, very individual for different people?
No, these strategies are effective for anyone. Mindfulness is something that is effective for anyone, whether they're binge eating, whether they're managing like strong anxiety, whether they're managing depression. The one caveat with that is when there's been severe trauma, meditation specifically, not necessarily mindfulness, because they're different, but isn't necessarily recommended, but it depends on the type and the person. A lot of the strategies that I'm using are cognitive behavioral, and I've learned that through, just my years of counseling and therapy education.
For sure.
And those are effective for anyone as well. It just depends on, when and how you're going to implement it. There's a skill to that. It's not like you want to go to a CBT book, pick out a strategy, and be like, I'm going to implement this today with that person.
Sure. That again, and I think that's what we talked about before we started the conversation, that ability to be able to not just use the science or use a tool that you've learned, be able to gauge it from experience, and when that person in front of you may need something different. And again, you can only really get that by experience. It sounds like, again, it's not so much right and wrong, it's have the best person's interests at heart, but sometimes you've got to progress and you'll sort of find better strategies for different people, and we go, okay, well, this worked and that didn't, and there's a lot of interchangeable sort of facets to that, if you like. To digress on that line of conversation, let's first of all look at, say, comp prep athletes, because that's something that my audience will be interested in, being from the physique standpoint. When you're working with these athletes, first of all, let's look at, because I find, and I'm sure you'll agree here, Kori, there's a difference between males generally and females. I find that females, there's much more complexity, and I think that's part to do with the hormonal makeup, etc. And I always say to my females, it's not a bad thing, because a lot of girls go, oh, and I said, well, there's pros and cons.
Not at all. Yeah.
Men are soft compared to women. We have a flu and we think we're dying. So
I literally just had this conversation with someone.
Right, there you go. It's true. But I think, there is a bit more complexity. And I think as a coach, something that I've realized, or I believe to be true, is that you have to pay a little bit more attention, and perhaps there has to be a little bit more detail, and there's more what I call coaching from the psychological standpoint by dispelling myths. And I think one of the biggest myths, and you might start with this or you might digress in another direction, is that with females, they're very, very focused on the binary scale weight, which affects them tremendously, even if you have explained it. And I believe this is ongoing education between, okay, look, you're untrained at the moment. We're going to be creating new tissue. We're going to be eating enough carbohydrates. That's going to pull water into the muscle. That's going to increase weight. It's not necessarily fat, it's glycogen. And you have to really extrapolate that out. Can you maybe share with us your experiences with female or male sort of comp prep athletes, or when there's going to be a change and variance in weight, and how you maybe, alleviate those misconceptions, if you like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't worked with a lot of male comp prep athletes, to be honest. I mostly work with females. And I'm not necessarily managing their nutrition. But I can speak from the mental and psychological side of it, and from my experience working with more general population, because they experience it too. There is no divide between comp prep athletes and general population individuals who become obsessed with the number on the scale. First and foremost, I think you nailed it, Alex. It is about consistent, perpetual dripage of education. And really working from this perspective of body acceptance.
Yes.
And also helping these individuals to really learn about how they were born into a culture. And God, it gets super complicated when you have a physique athlete, because literally that scale becomes a tool for them to understand whether things are really happening in terms of body fat loss. It does. But we were born into a culture that, especially for women, tells us that in order to be acceptable and beautiful, that we need to weigh a certain weight and wear a certain size and fit this certain look. And social media tells us too, depending on who we follow, and if we're working on fat loss, or we're a physique athlete, then we're inundating ourselves with images of those leanest people. The less than 1% of the population, right? Yeah. So there are those aspects that require some education, and there are the aspects of what is weight. Weight isn't the number on, weight is a lot more than just the number on the scale. And here are all of the variables that affect your weight on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes, Alex, I don't have my people weigh themselves. We don't use that as a tool in the toolbox. We don't collect that data. It's not necessary. There are a lot of other ways to measure progress, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So again, we come back to, I need to meet this person where they are. And if standing on the scale is incredibly triggering for them, and if that moves them, like, say it's a number they want to see, now they're in a great mood all day long. If they stand on the scale in the morning and that affects their mood for the rest of the day, and they're down in the dumps and they're hearing those voices that they're fat, they're ugly, and it moves them into a restrictive pattern, like, I'm not going to ignore that. Like, we're going to be working on and probably removing the scale from them, and we're going to have that conversation. It's not just me as their coach saying, I need to not have you weigh yourself anymore. I see that I froze.
But with you, the dialogue is, there you go, you're back.
Okay.
Dialogue is still going now. That's all good.
That's part of this process. Is I don't want to make any decisions for my clients. I want to have the dialogue with them, and I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to share with them what my concerns are, because that's literally what they hired me for. I have these years of experience, not just my own experience, years of working with clients. So I'm going to bring to them information, and I want to help them understand too, what, especially physique competitors.
Yes.
When we start, here is what you can anticipate. Here is what, as we move through this process, you are probably going to run up against. From a physical perspective, from a mental perspective, from an emotional perspective, energy-wise, hunger wise, like I want to try to, you said, dispel myths. Because I mean, they may be thinking this is going to be so fun the entire time.
Yes.
Okay.
That's too surprised.
Right now, it's fun because you're looking at that person on stage and not thinking at all about the process they went through to get there.
Oh, yeah.
That looks really fun. And you are right. Like, that was my favorite part of competing, was being on stage and doing the routine. That was the funnest part. Getting there, I mean, and some people maybe enjoy it.
Yeah.
Kori, at 5% body fat, is depressed, has zero energy. Like, so I have my experience, but I can speak to the experiences of a lot of other people. And from a human, compassionate, psychological perspective, people want to know what to expect. It's not fair for us as coaches to just like throw them to the wolves. Like, okay, here we go. We're going to prep for a contest and we'll see what happens along the way. No.
No, exactly. I just want to jump in there quickly because that's a really important point. And you actually mentioned it earlier. And I wanted to raise that is the setting expectations as well. Because like any professional, it's say, for example, I use the example of, say you go to see a surgeon, and a good surgeon will say, you know, this is what we're going to do and this is what's going to happen. And every step of the way, they're going to tell you, like, we're going to move into this room, and in this room, there's going to be such and such a person, and this person's going to do this. And I had the only surgery, thankfully, I've had is I had to get my wisdom teeth out. And I've got to say, it was really, I was nervous because I've never been under the knife before. But it was so professional, and each person, you know, they'd sort of, this is what's going to happen next. So I wasn't like, I'm going to walk into a door and everyone stood there with a mask on, like, surprise. I'm like, why is there 10 people in here? There's 14. What are you doing to me? Why do you need 10 people? Like, I'm not even kidding. There was at least, I might be exaggerating slightly, but there was like at least 8 people in there, all wearing a mask. That's very intimidating. And I'd consider myself quite a confident person. So for someone who perhaps lacks confidence, that would be very frightening. So I think setting expectations, going back to what you said, is really important. And when you say, you know, you've got to educate them about the journey, I think that's vital. And it's not that we're trying to scare people, because I think that does come across as sometimes a little bit, oh, are you trying to frighten me here? Because so-and-so and all these other coaches are saying that, but most coaches aren't doing their due diligence. And to rephrase what you said before, really important, this is a very high-risk, dangerous sport, I believe. You are literally starving yourself to death. When you think about it, it's the most dangerous sport, you could argue, because even though you might say, well, yes, going 200 mile an hour on a bike at Isle of Man, you can kill yourself instantly. Yes, that is true, but you're not voluntarily starving yourself to death. It's literally what we're doing. And again, it's not about putting that rosy gloom on it. I just think that the level of expectation, or the context, if you like, from comp prep athletes go, oh, that's going to be fun. I'm going to get shredded. And I think we have a lot of the more marketable organizations to not to blame, but I think that have put that caveat there because, you know, hey, we've got like bodybuilding figure, we've got like the traditional, like you are getting lean, and then we've got this more like fitness model, like, you know, it's the fit category, and there's all different names now, but anyway. And everyone goes, that looks fun, right? And it does. And it's like, yeah, you know what? Some of those people are really lean, but most of them, maybe they're like more like what I call beach lean, you know, like they're not like shredded glutes lean. And that is different. That is a whole other level of pain, and from experience and also from listening to other athletes. So I think you're right by saying, hey, look, like we can get there and there are more intelligent approaches, but it's gonna hurt at some point. I think psychologically it's as hard as you want to make it, and you do get better at it. And as you said, Kori, there's certain people who are just better cut out for it. And what I realize from comp preppers, it's not just the person with the strongest body that gets there. It's the person with the strongest mind that wins on the bodybuilding stage, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
That's a great point that you raise. I just want to re-emphasize that for the audience, because again, this is not a game. If you really want to get shredded, low body fat, be in the right place psychologically, mentally, financially, physically, spiritually, because otherwise, if you're unstable already, a comp prep is just going to extrapolate that and magnify it, and you're going to be in a world of hurt, and perhaps it'll cause more harm than good, which is why I don't recommend it for most people. As good as enriching as it can be, I think you've got to be all in or not at all.
There is so much when I competed for a total of 6 years before I retired, and I did 20 shows, and I learned something new every competition prep. You have to go into it with an attitude of curiosity, primarily curiosity. We were talking about attitude before you started recording, and I do think that's one of the most important variables as you move into any big goal. Since we're on this topic of competition prep, that attitude of curiosity and challenge and a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, like whatever I bump up against, like I'm going to look at through the lens of what can this teach me, and how can I become a more resilient, responsive versus reactive person through this. Then you're laying the groundwork and creating a platform for moving through that entire process with a much greater sense of openness than you would otherwise. You had mentioned, like, we as coaches don't set expectations or kind of give people an overview of what this can be like to scare them, but we have an obligation and a responsibility to let them know what could potentially occur. Just like you said, a doctor before surgery is going to say, here are the risks of this happening.
You need to do
same thing. What it does usually for people is, rather than create fear and anxiety, it relieves fear and anxiety, because now they're talking to a real human who is being honest with them, and that literally helps to create trust and a sense that, okay, I feel safe with this person, but it relieves that sense of trepidation. And if there is, because typically what happens is we've already built up the worst case scenario in our heads. Right?
We have a tendency to do that very well.
We tend to be pretty catastrophic in our way of thinking. But I do, because of the impact of social media. And people, especially in the comp prep industry, we're really only seeing and hearing about the successes and the awesomeness, and seeing when we see the progress photos, but rarely are people talking about how difficult it is, and rarely are people talking about when they binge, because it's rampant. It happens all the time, and not because there's something wrong with you, but because of those mental influences. Again, I think we have an even graver and greater responsibility to lay some things out for people, and then to say, here is how we can work through these things together.
So to continue on with this, before we move on to another question I want to ask you, Kori, is with and again, you said more female athletes that you've worked with, so people coming out of competition preparation, we've got recovery diets, reverse diets, however you want to term it, many terms out there, which is very important. What are some of the strategies and tools that you've been using, or how have you been finding, we have this post-comp blues, if you will. And again, there is this negative association between binge eating. And I think, again, just to highlight a point, when people come out of comp prep, especially if they've done it in a more unintelligent way, shall we say, or they've done it in a more vicious or brutal way, where they have literally made it a lot harder for themselves, because I see this whole, people get lean, they have this body image, they're like, wow, this is a standard now. And as you said in many podcasts, as a female especially, you look in the mirror, you're like, damn, I look good, I feel shit, I look good. And then you see that disappear and you're like, no, I can't lose that. And then you have this whole, well, I've binged, now I'm going to cut again really aggressively. But then, as you said, the whole point of why binge eating is actually a restrictive based habit is because that's what forces it. Because the more you restrict, the more you binge, right? And it's this whole vicious cycle, as you talked about before. So what are some of the tools that you have used or that you do use with these athletes, especially females? Because again, I think there is a little bit more going on there to help someone successfully build healthy relationships up with food again, along with, like you said, it starts with this like body image, right, of yourself, this self-love and compassion. Can you talk us through some of those methods that you...
Yeah, you bet. So I think, again, it starts with, as a coach, taking responsibility for not just the prep, but the post-prep period as well, and letting our clients in on what is potentially going to occur. Post-competition depression happens to every single individual that I've worked with.
Yes.
And not just in physique contests, but when we've worked so long and so hard and put so much effort into something, and then it's gone, it's over.
Yeah, and it goes, or it can do.
It's difficult. It doesn't go quick for the people in the audience. They're like, when is this gonna be over? I hope that everyone watching finds that funny, because it's not fun.
No, it is, because like there's a lot of categories these days, and it's very repetitive.
It's like,
if you're not into it. You're waiting for someone that you're watching and they're not on, and you're like, God damn it. These people are so vain with their tans and their flexing. Yes. Oh yes, this is vanity at its best.
Hats off to those of you who support physique and sit in the audience and watch. Okay, so what was I saying?
I think you were saying everyone feels the post-comp blues. Everyone gets a bit depressed.
Yeah. So you spend all this time, energy, money, effort, and all the people around you have too. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to competitors who are so concerned about that as well, the people around them. And especially in the context of, like, if they're getting close to the date and they're not ready. They're legitimately not ready, and they just need more time. Oftentimes the biggest concern is, but I set the date, but everyone's coming. Everyone's put it on their calendar. It's about everyone else. It's about all that external stuff. So there's a lot weighing on us as competitors. And then you factor in just all of, like I said, all the time and effort, meal planning, prepping, tracking, blah, blah, blah. And it literally lasts a few seconds. We're on stage for maybe a minute, and then you're done.
Yeah, it's very short-lived, isn't it? Unless you do multiple categories, and even then, in the grand scheme of things, you do all of this work for such a small, spotlight time, if you like.
Exactly. But it happens to everyone in any sport. The race, it's there and it's gone.
Yeah.
And so the emotional impact, it's difficult to wrap your brain around, and that's why it has to happen earlier in the process. Us as coaches saying, here is what you're probably going to feel, and here are some strategies for dealing with it. Part of it is who's your support system? Making sure that these individuals have a support system in place and anticipating the emotions that they might experience, not just emotions, but physical sensations too. Because often what happens is, you know, the first thing they're thinking about doing is having a massive meal afterwards. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, Alex, one of the most difficult times for me, because if we gain a ton of, if we're planning on doing another contest at some mm-hmm. point, right? Like we're in a contest season.
Yes.
If we gain a bunch of weight afterwards, we are just making our job that much more difficult to try to get back down to a leaner weight. Mm-hmm. If we put on any amount of muscle, you know, in that time period, when we have to diet really strictly to come back down to a certain level of body fat, we're probably losing that muscle.
Yeah.
So one of the hardest times for me was I had just competed in my final WNBF Worlds competition. I'm in New York City. And if you've ever been in New York City, you know that no matter where you walk, like everywhere there is food. So we're done with the competition, right? And this is the leanest I've ever been in my entire life. You talk about shredded glutes. I had shredded glutes.
Whoa.
I'm literally crying walking down the road because I feel like I am exerting so much self-control to not just like go into one of those pizza places and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. I probably should have just stayed in my hotel room. Like it was not fun for me to gotta get out, gotta be in New York City. Yeah. All I'm thinking about is food.
Yeah. And then you put it right on the carrots. It is actually quite scary that I must admit, like we've all sort of experienced that hunger, especially when you're young. You know, you get the shakes. You're like, you know, your body's growing, or
your low blood sugar.
Like, this is the hungriest I've ever been in my life. Mm-hmm. And then you do comp prep, and for those who do experience this, I gotta say, it's scary. It's a hunger like you've never experienced, and it seems like a bottomless pit at the time because you know you get full, but your brain's like, no, keep eating because you're starving, but your stomach's like, no more, but your mind's like, no, just keep going. And
because the mind is anticipating another famine, and that is literally what we do. So why would the body trust us?
Exactly, not after all we've done to it.
Unless we start, and this is part of that kind of post-competition, there's the blues, yes, and there's emotion, and there's mindfulness for working through that. There's honoring of the emotion rather than trying to avoid it. It's like, you've heard the phrase, feel your feelings. Mm-hmm. Yes, feel your feelings. Like, the thing with that is feelings come in the form of emotion. Emotion is energy in motion in your body. Mm-hmm. Like if I were to ask you, Alex, you know, how do you even know when you're frustrated? What would you say?
I would say it was a physical awareness as well as a mental one. It might be the case of feeling agitated or antsy a little bit, as you said before, you know, and for me, it might be like a mental fluff or blur. It's not clear. There's questioning going on. It's tedious. It's not quite, it's not a clear path.
Not crisp.
Foggy.
Yeah. It's not crisp. Okay. So what you're doing is you're saying, here are all of the internal symptoms that let me know frustration is here. And part of the strategy is not saying, I am frustrated, because then it's like every cell in my body is frustrated. Like I can't get away from it.
You confirm it, sort of thing.
Yeah. It's like we are entangled in frustration, as opposed to noticing, like you said, the internal sensations, what's happening in the mind. There may be some thoughts like, I can't do this. This is too hard. Why did I choose to? I don't know. For everyone, it would be different. The thoughts would be. But noticing the internal, and then what I also have my clients do to begin to get like more in touch with emotion. Because here's the thing with bodybuilding and physique competition. We ignore our bodies. We learn to shut all that stuff off. When the body says, I'm hungry and the stomach growls, we're eating by the clock. I'm pointing over here because I have a clock, guys. This is where my clock is. We are eating according to not how much we maybe actually need in terms of amount of food. We've already prepped it. It's in a container. It doesn't matter how much we need. We eat what we prepped. So the cues of the body they're not a guide for us when we're prepping in a way that they need to be on a regular daily basis. So the signs and the symptoms, that's one thing I have my clients do. What are the signs? Those are the things on the outside that other people would notice. So if I were coaching you, Alex, I might ask, your partner or friends of yours. I'd have you ask them, hey, what do you notice about me when I'm acting frustrated? And they might say, well, like, you play with your ear.
Right. Yeah.
And you might be like, really? I do? Because it may be something you're not even conscious of. And that can be really helpful for a client to begin to pay attention and become more aware and get to know themselves better. So having that emotional awareness and then to be able to put it into words and then have a strategy for what to do with it is really going to be helpful. But then as a coach as well, to begin to help them strategize around how are you going to manage just your day-to-day in a different way? Because I think a lot of competitors will tend to just keep doing what they're doing and we're doing during prep and think that's going to be healthy. And maybe for some, to a degree, it is. Having a structure, we don't just throw away all the structure. That's not going to help, especially in a very uncertain time. During uncertainty and anxiety, some level of structure helps, right? So let's look at your exercise. We don't necessarily want to take that away. Let's look at your current routine. How do we want to modify that to be more appropriate for where your body comp is right now? You're eating a bit more food, helping your client to structure the increase in calories, if that's an appropriate thing for you to do. And then sleep, because sleep really, let's focus on the whole person. Sleep, activity, food, asking what was put on the back burner during your prep process, or who was put on the back burner, or, what did you what were you not paying attention to that needs your attention now that the show is over? Because they've had a goal. They've had a purpose. They've had an aim for however long period of time. And to just have them meandering aimlessly around now without a goal or a purpose or an aim, we have an obligation as coaches to talk to them ahead of time about what they might want to throw their efforts and energies into post-show. What are we going to want to kind of pick up and get rolling? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you sort of alluded to, I think, again, it's having that journey or something laid out, having a strategy, having a plan, verbalizing it, getting out there in the open, and again, setting an expectation of, hey, you're probably going to feel like this, or you may feel like this, or this and this.
Yeah.
And that's actually okay, because it is part of the process.
That is a very good point, to normalize the discomfort.
Which is not spoken about enough, like you said before. It seems to kind of get lost in the works. And it's not like we're trying to paint or make it out to be a negative thing, because it's not. But you do need to acknowledge that it's part of it, because I think the issue lies in when it does happen, people are always like, oh, I didn't expect this. It's like, yeah, because most people weren't talking about it, where even if you expected it or someone said, hey, this is kind of part and parcel of it, you know, take the good with the bad, at least then you could be like, well, it's not like surprise, you know, it's a bit more of, oh, okay, this someone did warn me about this at least.
Well, that, Alex, and we can't warn people about everything. We don't actually know what they're going to experience. Everyone is different, like we've talked about.
Right.
But to help them understand that no matter what occurs, if they have that, oh my God, I didn't expect this reaction, for them to still know they're okay. Like this, the thought it's not okay is okay to have. This is, again, the mindfulness practice, to not judge the thought and believe that it's telling the truth.
Especially when you're in that state where, as you rightly said, you're not thinking normally, clearly. You're not running on the internal cues that we are used to doing. I think that sort of stems back to other things that have been mentioned where, you know, if people ate to their mindfulness or their cues of eating, then people wouldn't be overweight. But, you know, if they listen to their body, sometimes listening to your body isn't always a solution, because if that was the case, you would just eat everything. Well, in that state of mind, it's again, sometimes you have to use these tools to come back to a place where you can trust your body again, or your mind, and then it's in alignment, because again, things are kind of very thrown off when you're messing around with body fat levels and the amount of food you're eating, which is an interesting point, which probably is going to lead on to my next question, where, you know, I talk to people about, you know, listening to their internal hunger cues, and it seems it's quite funny, isn't it? Because, you know, we work with people, Kori, where people come to us and go, you know, I want to improve my body composition or my relationship with food or whatever it might be. And I use the example of evolution over time, how, say, many, many centuries ago, we would have been more active. We would have been foraging for food. We would have been moving, constructing, communicating. But now, you know, the first thing was that now food is abundant, where it wasn't back in the day, or it might have not have been. It would have been down to your financial situation, or how, you know, skilled your tribe was at, you know, being able to get food or keep food. And then, you know, that evolved to now where we have food for everyone and we're plentiful, and we don't have to hand wash things anymore or build houses as much, you know, or, you know, do all these day-to-day tasks, which now are literally, we could sit here on our laptop and phones and I could get food right to me right now with Deliveroo or whatever the services are wherever you're in the world. And that's a scary thought, because I wouldn't even have to expend almost any calories apart from maybe my basal metabolic rate just ticking over, because I could literally just press a button and get the food to come to my door, and I might walk, say, 5 feet and pick it up. And so it sounds very simple, but all of these little things over time have kind of, you know, added on, and then you've got many of the things I didn't mention, like social media, and this is how we're meant to look. And I think a combination of those things, and I often put it into context where it's like, we just have to relearn how to listen to our bodies like we used to. Like, it was very normal back in the day. Most people would have just been like, yeah, I'm hungry, so I'm going to eat. And we didn't overthink it. We didn't put it on Instagram and all this carry on, where now it's, everything is being like overthought, and it's all out of context and out of whack, and people have forgotten how to eat. And I think one of the things I'm most surprised about is, you know, the way I like to do things, Kori, is I like to set basic recommendations and guidelines first, because I don't like to give someone, depending on where they're at, again, it's individual. I think if you just give someone a meal plan with no context, some people need that rigidity, but straight off the bat, sometimes it's too much. You ask someone, they go, oh, what can I eat? And, you know, I often sort of give them some food groups and ideas, but most people, if you say, you know, I just want you to eat this many meals at least a day with a protein serving, and, you know, so many fruits and vegetables or whatever. And people are like, what should I eat? And I'm like, well, what do you want to eat? And they're like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what do you like? You know, yeah, right. This baffles me. You know, and these are not like, these are, you know, some educated people I'm dealing with here a lot of the time. And people are like, I don't know, like, what do you eat? And I'm like, well, I can tell you what I eat. And sometimes, you know, you've got to sort of go through this process. but
Yes.
I want you to choose foods that you like. Obviously, it's not going to be loads of fast food and junk food, but it's got to be something you like. And then this is where I always get back to this, I say it's got to be flexible, sustainable, enjoyable. I'm like, this is why we need to do this. And this is the difference between you getting a cookie cutter meal plan and someone just going, eat these calories. It's like you're putting yourself on this rigid, strict diet plan, and that's not sustainable for the rest of your life. It's not going to teach you anything. You're going to go back at some point and go, well, if I want to lose weight again, I'm just going to eat this food with these amounts because that's what got me to lose weight. And it's like, no, it wasn't. It may have just been the calorie deficit at the time, right? So it's interesting. So I guess to formulate this into a question for you, Kori, what are some of the so I'm going off on a tangent.
I like it.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions and perhaps facades that you encounter with your clients when they come to you and they are like, for example, they may say, oh, it's, if I'm going to eat this, I'm going to get fat. Or again, we always get this, Kori. So, fried chicken's bad for you, right? Or Nutella's bad for you. What are good foods? And there's this whole, and I'm really passionate about this like, get rid of this. Yeah. Like we've got I'm actually just doing a spoiler alert, doing a YouTube video for my latest series today about the whole like clean versus dirty diets, like what's the difference and defining and the context. And it's not about one or the other. It's society's, label that's been put on these foods.
Yep.
So can you please perhaps share some of, again, the misconceptions that you encounter and perhaps how you display those myths to put things in context for people?
So the only way that I know I'm hungry is when my stomach is growling.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your stomach growling?
That's my dog. That's enough, mate. But he's not. He's barking at the that's there.
Is he hungry?
He's barking at the. He's always hungry. That fella. No, he was barking at the postman. Actually.
Okay.
But actually, on that subject, he's a Canadian black and tan coonhound. So he's he's a good-looking fella. He's got that but they've got a sense of smell which is heightened. I think it's again around about 10 times better than even a normal dog. So it's unreal. So you can imagine his distraction, and his food focus is off the chain. He's like in combat. But
I was gonna say I wouldn't like a 10 times stronger olfactory sense. Like that would be awful.
It has its pros and its cons, I think.
I think I'm going to the cons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think people can use their imagination for that one. But no, he loves, like, food is wow. Like he smell. Yeah, it's so you be at the beach and he'll smell an apple core that's meters down in the sand. He'll dig it and he'll find it. Like it's very impressive.
Grab the shovel.
Yeah. Oh no, he doesn't need a shovel. This guy can dig a hole in no time, I tell you.
Okay, so on that note, Alex,
anyway,
seriously, that's probably one of the misconceptions is that we're not supposed to enjoy our food, especially if we're working on a fat loss goal.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many people I work with who just don't and feel guilty if they do. Because if I'm enjoying it, it's bad.
Yeah, it's taboo.
Yeah, it's on that binary list of off limits. Gosh, I don't know. There are so many, I don't know if they're myths, but issues that come up that just like scream at me, okay, we've got stuff to deal with here.
Yeah.
In terms of like hunger, dieting has become, it's like the hunger versus fullness diet almost. And I think we need to dispel the myth that we're doing something wrong if we eat out of pleasure and we eat out of like, emotional eating is not all bad, guys. That's a huge myth.
Mm.
We eat emotionally all the freaking time. Usually when I'm eating, I'm happy. I like to eat.
I'll second that. I love eating.
I love eating. I love eating. And I love, like, I'm not going to eat anything I don't like. So that's a myth too. Like, you're only doing this right if the food is like boiled chicken.
Oh.
And really? People, come on. Boiled chicken? I never even did that when I was prepping. Like, no.
No way.
One of my rules was I'm not going to eat anything I don't like. It is all going to be food that I enjoy. Here's a myth that not a lot of people maybe necessarily have considered, and this is where we get into like fat phobia. So here's one. Fat people are lazy. Fat people are impulsive. Fat people just eat all the time. Okay? No. And fat does not mean you're not fit.
Mm-hmm.
No. Big myth. People in larger bodies are not as healthy. No. Big fat lie. I know plenty of athletes who live in larger bodies who could just kick my ass in certain things. I mean, take power lifters, for example. Like, they live in larger bodies. Some of them could probably, on a body fat percentage-wise scale, be fat, right? On a BMI scale, they would certainly be obese.
Oh, I'm obese on the BMI scale.
Well, right. Okay, so don't even get me started on BMI. Like, it's completely arbitrary measure. I don't use it.
No.
It doesn't even matter. So there's another myth, guys. Like, can you just like rip up the BMI? Yep. Doesn't matter.
We get people who want to. I actually am working with a client at the minute. She needs to lose, a significant amount of weight for her, her health, but more for her, female health, because she wants to have kids, etc. Without digressing into it too much. And she says, my doctor said I need to get to this BMI, and I'm like, oh god. And then I had to say, well, look, like that's not a bad thing, but I need to give you some context to BMI because. And I always just use the context, and I'm in front of people and I say, I'm obese level 2. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I'm obese level 2 on the BMI scale. And they're like, but you're so fit and muscular. And I'm like, yeah, because it doesn't account for lean mass. I fall out of the average for my height.
I love, Alex, that you're like a literal example sitting right in front of them. Yep. I am going to die probably tomorrow because I'm obese level 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Apparently. Yeah. And then they're like, what? And you're like, yep. And then you just give them that caveat and they slowly let go of that. Because, she's been given this number now, right? And she's like, I've got to get to this BMI. And I'm like, no, you don't. We need to just reduce body fat levels along with all these other things, with strength. Yeah. But anyway, continue.
Let's use other measures. Measures.
Yes.
Let's use how your energy is changing.
Yes.
Let's use the new knowledge you're gleaning in terms of how your body is showing it's hungry, or how you're assessing satisfaction and fullness, or the color in your meals that you're consuming now. Like, notice that when we started, all of your meals were brown. And now they look like the rainbow. And I laugh, but you know what? My happiest meals, Alex, are the ones that contain the most color. I put a lot of energy and effort into this. And when my meals don't have much color, I'm like, I engage in emotional eating then. It's I'm literally sad and crying when I'm eating my meal. This isn't yummy.
Yeah, it's a bit bland sometimes. It's just about taking that effort. But it's true. The making it interesting and making a bit of effort. And people are always so reluctant to try things. And, I always say it's learn by doing. You just have a go, like I'm not
give it
going
a whirl. Let's
relevant.
see what happens.
Yeah, just
Do an experiment.
Yeah, that's
you
it.
may not like it, and that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it comes to that curious attitude and mindset that I'm going into this with the potential for growth and new understanding. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know what will happen, but I'm going to embrace that uncertainty and know that I will be okay through it because I have an awesome coach named Alex.
Thank you. Or Kori in this. Or maybe both. There you go.
Yes.
So we've got all the corners covered, if you like.
Yeah. You know, the way that I like to look at eating, well, there's two things I want to say. A very sort of practical way of looking at how to choose what foods to eat is like, well, how do you choose how to get dressed in the morning? Like, how do you choose what to wear? Mm-hmm. Well, you know, sometimes my meals are super practical. I just know I need to eat because I'm hungry and I have this available. Mm-hmm. Same thing. When I'm standing in front of my closet, I just know I need to get dressed. I don't have to be anywhere. It just needs to be comfortable.
Minimum requirements.
Exactly. Same with food. Okay, so what the availability factor, like, well, okay, most of my clothes are in the hamper, so these are my options. Like, when everything in your fridge is gone and your cupboards are sparse, like, what are the options? Okay, I can throw something together. When I want to feel extra pretty and special and want to take a little bit more time and put some more effort into what I'm going to wear. Mm-hmm. Same thing with food. I have a little bit more time this evening. Like, I might want to make one of those extra special, colorful meals. Like, and then what do I feel like? Sometimes I get done with my work day and all I want to do is put on my sweats and just be comfy, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Same thing with food. I just want a comfortable, easy meal. Just like getting dressed.
Eggs on toast.
I had that for breakfast today.
It's a winner, and you can have it for dinner, lunch, awesome. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. It does not just have to be breakfast. It can be any meal. Yes.
I feel like, yeah, that's a really good, like you said, it's a good example. Like, you've got that, the simple, basic food, it works. And basics are always the best, I find, you know, like they're always the staple. Yeah. Don't overcomplicate it.
Right? I threw on today a tank top. I knew I wanted it to say the Diet Doc on it. And some jean shorts.
Easy,
simple, basic, fun, colorful.
Appropriate for the weather.
Thank you. Yes. Same thing with food. But that takes a lot of practice because the thing is when most of our clients have come to us having dieted for decades. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have clients who started dieting when they were 5 with their moms at Weight Watchers. Like, this is these very black and white, very rigid, very restrictive rules about what's okay and what's not okay. Mm-hmm. They're ingrained patterns of behavior and thought processes that can take a very long time to move out of. It's literally in the brain. What happens is when you've done something over and over and over and over and over and over and over again repeatedly, and it's been reinforced. It doesn't matter whether it's healthy or not. Those tracks in your brain, they just keep moving faster and faster, kind of like a coaxial cable versus dial-up internet, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we never really get rid of that cable in our brains, even when we change our behavior. That is literally always going to be an option up here. But what we do is we create, if you look at it like a river instead, we create offshoots. We create tributaries off of that river. So these are the other patterns of behavior that we're now beginning to make bigger rivers because we're spending more time on them. We're thinking about them more. We're practicing that behavior repeatedly. So now we may have this river kind of dries up, gets smaller and smaller, still there. But then this river becomes wider and wider. And it means that this behavior is going to become easier and easier because we've practiced it repeatedly over and over again. Our clients who have dieted for decades have years of ingrained behavior to begin decoupling, pulling apart, replacing, and learning these new tools and strategies for overcoming.
Yeah. You can start to see how a lot of it, or most of it, just comes from that psychological aspect of you know, these habits and these relationships, etc. And it's like laying the foundations over time. You know, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. One little question before, because we're approaching time, before my fun questions. I appreciate it. Thank you, Kori. It's a great conversation, and as I we can talk for hours. Is sometimes when you say diet to someone, because diet in itself is I can see this is gonna
yeah, you can see it right here.
Exactly, the diet, and then behind your head, doc. Hey,
I know. I want to like hunker down.
You're right. And well, for people who are listening, jump on the YouTube so you can watch this as well, because you need the visual. Or you're very expressive like me. Have you got some Italian in you or something? Very visual like me. Yeah, it's good.
I don't, but you're not the only one who said that. And like when I'm publicly speaking, I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah, you're animated. Yeah, but it's good because it helps build that picture and get the point across. It's better than just standing there monotone like this. Oh my God, it's boring. But you know what? How do you feel when, you know, perhaps people go, oh, a diet? Like I often find people, they might use that word in a negative connotation, or it has a negative connotation. I know there'll be a lot of people listening now, like nodding their head, like, yeah, diet. Like some of us, we use that word. Or when I think of a diet, I think about restriction and, you know, planned food. So what's your opinion on that? Let me put it that way.
Okay. So when you say that, I think of the diet culture. And the diet culture has perpetuated this myth, like I said, that we need to weigh a certain way, look a certain way, fit in a certain size of clothing, whatever. Diet, the word, has become associated with weight loss.
Yes.
A diet, so a meal plan, a protocol, something to follow.
Yes.
When I think of diet, I think of nourishing nutrition. We all have a diet. Every person on the planet has a diet. It's their nutrition. It's what they consume. It's what they don't consume. It's what they choose to eat or not eat. That's their diet. And when I approach my clients, yes, like you said, it becomes very obvious to them what their history has been and how they view the word. Nutritional nourishment to me sounds expansive and fun and interesting and curious and like energizing.
Yeah.
A diet sounds to me restrictive, constricting, like, it feels like prison.
Yeah, it does.
Literally. So, I do get concerned about what people think when they see this. At the same time, I help people lose weight. But when we're looking at, what'd you say? Sustainable, enjoyable, flexible. Thank you. Awesome. Our diets, our nutritional nourishment need to be all of those things.
Yeah, 100%. They need to tick those boxes.
Yeah. And to know that, depending on the circumstances, and this comes in with the flexibility, but sustainable, guys, doesn't mean the same every day. Sustainable doesn't mean completely planned out and within macronutrient ranges. Sustainable means having an understanding that depending on the situation and the circumstances and the outside variables and the people around me and the emotions that I'm feeling and everything going on inside of me, that my nutrition might change. And that's an intuitive eating principle, just like honor my health.
Correct.
And health, guys, there's another big word. Health does not mean weight. And diet culture, that's another thing that diet culture, I think, has perpetuated, Alex. Health is, I have social health, I have mental health, I have physical health, I have occupational health. I have, name all the different types of health. We are multifaceted individuals. Health, and this is research that, just blows my mind. We know that 70% of weight is governed by genetics, right? Okay, that's really super important to understand, guys, because if 70% of weight is governed by genetics, that means we can't control it. We're not changing our genes in any way. So what's the other 30%? That's not all stuff that we can control either. These are like social determinants of health, these external circumstances. Your socioeconomic status, how much money you make, how much support you have socially makes a difference. Where you live makes a difference. Food availability makes a difference.
Yeah.
And so part of this is learning to understand that, no, we are not all supposed to look the same and all be 10% body fat and have these beach body looking physiques. That's not realistic, nor is it healthy. I'll tell one more story before we end it. Okay, Alex. So client that I'm working with, we were talking about different bodies. And she said to me, Kori, someone said to me recently, like, our bodies are like a container. They're just a container to move around the world in. And I was like, have you ever been to the Container Store? Have you?
Yeah, I know, right?
You know what it is?
All different shapes and sizes.
Oh my God, it's so cool. The container, this massive complex of just any container you could ever want, like from the smallest little jar to put face cream in for travel to just big, huge bins that you could just shove whatever in.
You could probably live in one.
Yes. So I'm like, the world is like the Container Store. No container in that store is better than any other. All of them just serve a different purpose. That is exactly what our bodies are in this world. We're not supposed to look the same. We're not all supposed to be the same body fat level. All of us have different bodies that serve different purposes and are going to contribute to this world in a different way. No matter the size, no matter their shape. All bodies are good bodies. That's
it. That's probably quite an appropriate note to end on as well. Good one. And thank you for sharing. No, that's all right. Yeah. Well, you talk a lot, I talk a lot together. It's going to be a whole festival of conversation, which again probably leads me to think that we will have to do a couple of rounds, or maybe we'll do a series. I'm thinking maybe that you do with Joe as well, where we can sort of get in and
figure it out.
We've got a lot of people that have a lot of specific questions, and maybe I could sort of compile them, and then we can sort of just like rapid fire through them. I think we could help a lot of people if you're game for that. But before we do leave, as always, I like to ask my guests a couple of more lighthearted questions before the final question, just to add a little bit more, even though I think people have got your personality and they tell you're very angelic and, full of very good. It is.
Angelic is never something I've been called, Alex.
Oh, really?
In my journal tonight, I was called angelic.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's good. You're very
Even
expressive and
the
lots of
raspy
positivity.
voice and everything. I used to sing, but right now I will not subject people to that.
Oh, really? Oh, I've almost had 2 people sing on my podcast now.
Oh, well, you've already had 2 people sing.
No, you're the second person who's tried it on. So, I mean, yeah, you know what? Maybe we're going to take a different direct, guys. Training, nutrition, and lifestyle. This is it. The people, America's got talent. Australia's got talent. I don't know. Where are we going to go with this next? Perhaps it'll turn into,
This will be my second audition for American Idol. I auditioned for American Idol in 2006.
Did you?
Clearly, if I had made it, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair, guys.
You could be like the diet doc / singer. That'd be good, right? You could like sing people, like your lyrics could all be based on like the principle. That'd be great.
People back to life.
My next album, Sustainable Eating.
Yes, maybe. One-hit wonder.
There you go. Why not? That's all you need these days. Just one hit, take your money, run.
True.
Never see you again.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm stalling.
All right,
I gotta distract him so he doesn't ask me this question.
They're not too heavy. My first question is gonna be based around food. I'm gonna shoot straight to this one because I like it. So
I'm ready.
You've got, and you can think about this in 2 ways. You've got one last meal that you can have. It's your last meal ever. Yes, you can have a drink. Yes, you can have an entree. Yes, you can have a main. Yes, you can have a dessert. Whatever you like. Or it's going to be like the food that you have to eat for the rest of your life. But if you have one last meal or your favorite meal, what would it be?
My favorite meal. This is going to sound really boring to people.
I was expecting.
Like, what? Seriously?
No, go
on. First, it would include a Monster. Ultra Zero.
Ooh. Okay, just quickly though, because see now, for the viewers, for the listeners, most of them are in Australia. We're actually all around the place now. But see, for the Australian listeners then, we only have, at the moment in Australia, they've only been subjected to the white zero, right?
Yeah.
And the orange one. Now, right? It's
I don't like it.
Like Fanta gone wrong. So,
Orange Crush.
Yeah, it's good. But people say the white Monster is the best. I'm saying it is. However, I do have a friend. I have a hookup. She works for Qantas. And she knows how much I like variety. And for my birthday last year, she bought me all the flavors. And she's like, Alex, happy birthday. So I got to try all the flavors. And I got to say, like, the I think it was the red or the purple. The purple, I think I really liked out of it.
Like the purple.
I think I was. But the white seems to still take the cake. But people, they only have access to we only have the white and the orange here. So can you confirm, Kori, is the white Monster the best one?
White Monster is yes, resounding yes. I should have sang like an angel for
there
that.
You go.
But
You heard it here first, guys. This is legit.
I don't think is there a green one?
I don't know. There might be, but I think they're releasing new flavors now. Like if we're talking of the zero sugar range, but we've not got anything.
Monster Zeros. Yep.
We've not got anything here.
I've tried all the other ones. I'm just like, meh.
Yeah.
No, nothing compares. So white Monster all the way. Gotta have my white Monster. Okay, that's gotta be there.
Done.
It's the flavor and the carbonation, and I actually hate that they call them energy drinks. Because literally, they have less than 2 cups of coffee.
Yeah, it's 160 milligrams off the top of my head of caffeine. It's pretty.
You're exactly right.
It's not too bad. It's pretty tame, which is good.
Pretty tame.
Yeah,
because I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm not like it lasts me half the day.
Yeah, it's quite large. There you get the big ones, so they are. Yeah, I can't skull. I can't skull carbonated drinks anyway. I just don't have the ability. It's like tickles my throat too much, and then I just start burping, and it's just. Yeah, I've never been on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thing of the carbonation on my throat. Okay. And you know what I'm going to have? I'm going to have a massive kitchen sink salad.
Oh.
Okay, most people, when they talk salad, it's like some lettuce and tomato.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
no, 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 no. No, 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 people. Come on.
Here we go. I know you've got a thing for salads, actually.
Multiple kinds of lettuce. So I know that iceberg lettuce doesn't really have any nutritional value, guys. I don't care. It's crunchy. Texture is a big deal for me in my food.
Yeah,
I want some iceberg or romaine, but I want some spring mix as well. And the kind with a little bit of dill, that's awesome. Okay, so I want some of that. I also have to have arugula. Oh, okay. I love arugula. Have you had arugula?
Yeah, they put it on. It's nice on pizza.
It is excellent on pizza. Yes, it's got like that peppery flavor, spiciness to it. I happen to love pizza as well. That would be second in line to the best meal.
So you're going to have salad with a pizza on top?
That's what I do when I have pizza. I throw salad on top of it because I like it all together and like to eat it together.
Nice.
But salad. So you have all of those different lettuces. You've got a ton of different roasted veggies. So I love roasted eggplant. This is what I have in my fridge right now. Roasted carrots, roasted cauliflower, roasted broccoli, roasted zucchini, roasted yellow squash. Okay. I love tomatoes. I love cucumber. And then probably some sort of protein source. Right now, I love tempeh. Tempeh. All the way. You know what that is?
Is that raw, like tuna or something? Oh no! Hang on! No, hang on! No! Is this the vegan based thing? Yeah. Is it the stuff that's made from like bacteria or something?
It's fermented soybeans.
That's it. Because no. So I always get mixed up because there's a funny name for like this raw tuna.
Ahi?
Yeah, there's some, I don't know, but I believe there is another one though that's on the menu here, and it begins with the same letter, and I'm like, they call it like tekka. It's weird, right?
Wow.
What is that? And they're like, oh, it's just the name we use for the raw tuna, and it's like, it's like not the flake tuna, it's like your proper like steak tuna. It's like
steak, yeah.
It's like raw. It's good stuff. So I always get mixed up, but no, I actually just did with another coach in Germany, and we were talking about plant-based foods, and he mentioned it, and he goes, it sounds disgusting, but it's amazing.
So good. It's just like it's fermented soybeans that they press it and pack it. But I marinate mine in like some Bragg's aminos and garlic and wing sauce, as strange as that sounds, and then I bake it.
There you go.
I like spicy. So in my salads too, though, Alex, gosh, this is getting very complicated. And you're like, no one has ever taken this long to answer a question. Like,
no one's chosen a salad for their quite frankly. So you just set a record there.
There we go. Right. This isn't just any salad, because then I have I love garbanzo beans in it. Garbanzo beans are my favorite. Also marinate those.
You are quite the culinary pioneer, aren't you, Kori?
Culinary adventurer. Yes. And then I gotta have some sort of dressing. My favorite right now is Bolt House. Do you like Bolt House dressings? They have those there. Like, it's a creamy ranch.
Probably a different name or a different brand or something.
Yeah. So it's made with Greek yogurt, so it's lower in fat. Like regular ranch dressing is like no.
Yeah.
So a bunch of different textures and as silly as this sounds, like I want some rice cakes on the side. Getting a pattern here, guys. I like crunchy.
You go, girl.
I want some rice. Give me my rice cakes with either.
Have some amazing flavors over there, though. Like we used to have some good flavors. I think there's probably some people like, we have good flavors, Alex. I'm like, yeah, but no. In America, You got everything.
Caramel, chocolate.
Oh, that's see. Oh.
Buttered popcorn.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
But so I'm just lightly salted. Give me the lightly salted ones, and I'm just gonna smash some avocado on it. If I don't have avocado, it's peanut butter. There you go. Favorite, most satisfying yumminess meal. Wash it down with ice cold Monster.
Wow, that is the best combination and the most bizarre I have heard to date. I mean, it sort of breaks all of the rules, or what rules people think, right?
Right.
You just, yeah, I love it. Lead by example.
I have that pretty much every day.
That's great. Is that a lunch or a dinner for you?
It's usually lunch.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like that'd be a good lunch because you still got the energy from the Monster. You don't want to be having that too late in the day, be bouncing off the wall. You're anything like me as well. Just we got too much energy, if anything. So we don't need to add fuel to that fire.
We do need sleep. We do.
yeah. Contrary to popular belief. All right. So moving on to my next question, then. You'll like this one. If you could choose a superpower, all right? If you choose a superpower, what would it be and why?
Can I just say the first thing that came to my mind? Because I don't want to overthink it.
That's what I want you to say.
Overthink food. I would have like a cloak that makes me disappear.
Oh, the invisible cloak. Yeah. So you can sneak into rooms and listen to conversations. You're not meant to
be. I'd be a total voyeur. I'm a psychologist. Like, I'm fascinated by people. If they didn't know I was there,
imagine that.
I could be a fly on the wall, but not be a fly. Yeah. Because people want to kill flies. No one would know I'm there. No one to kill.
Imagine that. You're with a client. You've asked them a question. It's pressing. You're not really getting where you want to go. Or you want the what's going on when I'm not there? And you go, hey, I really got to use the bathroom, or I got to grab a drink. You go out the room, right, put the cloak on, go back in the room, see what the internal monologue is happening. They might sort of speak out, like, maybe they're writing something down. You give them a task, Oh, that'd be interesting.
Love it. Yes. I get so much interesting information. Yeah.
And we have just basically given away a plot line for a new show that's going to be about 12 months from now. You're welcome, guys. It's going to be the new Netflix series, all right?
Yes. There we go. Cut that out. We don't want anyone to know.
No, we're going to franchise that.
Okay.
Definitely. That's I like it. The invisible cloak is good. Right. And all right, my last of my little fun rapid fire questions, a little bit different. If you could wake up anywhere in the world tomorrow, where would it be and why?
I'm just going to say the first thing that came to mind again. In your head.
That's how it works.
In your head. Really? That's the first thing that came into my mind.
So I
would wake up in your mind.
Right. So you're in your own container. You're not in anyone else's. I'm going to use that now. I'm going to be like, be in your container, guys. Like, people be like, what is he talking about? He's lost the plot. It's fine. No, this is because my friend, she refers to it. She's spiritual, right? She calls it a vessel. She's like, this is the vessel. And I'm like, I like it. It's good, but container, that's a whole new angle because that's more nutritionally based. It's like, yo, we eat from containers. I am a container. We're all containers.
I'm going to be a Tupperware today.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, going to be glass. Don't fall. You might break. No. But good for the environment. So anyway. No, this is good. Anyway, on to my last question, which is...
I thought that was the last one.
No, I know. No, that was the rapid fire one. There's more.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
It's like PNX on an email and then PPS, PPPF. I don't know.
I'm like, those are the types of emails that I'm like, I need to spend time for this one.
If you've made it this far, guys. It's very interesting combo. my last is a bit more serious. It's one that I ask all my guests, and it's, can you, and again, first thing that comes to mind, Kori, it doesn't have to be quick. You can extrapolate this one, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Can you identify a fear, right, in your life, hence Fearless Training, right? Name my company, it's what I do. Where you had to overcome a fear, perhaps what that fear was and what you learned from overcoming this particular fear. And you can use, like, it might be an example of something you've done in your sporting career, it might be with a client, hell, whatever you want.
You know, the biggest fears I experience, Alex, are, and when I say fear, I mean like I'm sitting on it. I'm not moving because I am there's a lot of uncertainty, and I don't know what the reaction is going to be. And they typically revolve around relationship. Mm-hmm. So typically with someone that I'm close to. And it's super funny to me and ironic because I teach people how to communicate with other people. That's part of my job. Mm-hmm. And what I do as a therapist / counselor / coach, whatever. But let's just use the example of my current relationship that I'm in right now, and having something that I want to say. I understand fully that it needs to be said, and I wait. Like, I don't want to say it because I fear what the reaction will be. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's funny because I don't necessarily think that I'm not going to be able to manage the reaction, or that it's going to break me in some way. But if the reaction is poor, say that I express something and this person says, then I don't want to be with you anymore. Everything that comes after that. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm guessing what these words sounds like. It's the big I, you, right? Yeah, that one. The L word. Well, it's more the opposite thing. If it's not reciprocated. Yeah. That's not happening in my relationship right now, but it has. It's interesting, actually. I'll share something that I read from a friend she's like a relationship sort of expert. That's what she does, right? And she said the people always, they fear this part, and she said from experience, from a man's and a woman's perspective, one of the best ways to, it's so clever to rephrase it, instead of saying to someone, if you know that first time, like, I love you, because it's like, oh, and then you're sort of like, and do you love me too, you know? But then she said you could say something, for example, so it's a bit more lighthearted, but it has that same sort of impact where you say, you know, I think I'm falling in love with you, or I think I might be falling in love with you, which kind of is like, it takes a lot of pressure off, but it also lets the other person know, like, wow, like, oh, I feel really loved, I feel really special. But then it takes the pressure off the other person to not just say, well, I love you too, or they might, you know, say that but it doesn't kind of like scare them as much. And I just thought it was really good, and I'm like, that's really clever. So it is to change the wording, and to be perfectly honest, I think most of us, when we say it, we want to hear someone say it back, but if that's honestly not how they feel, I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't want my potential partner to feel pressured to say something that isn't authentic. Correct. You know, so over the years, like this is in my past, that fear. I look at fear much differently now. Fear to me, I don't know that I experience fear. I experience trepidation. I experience this sense of like, don't do that yet. You need more information. Unless we're talking about like someone jumps out of the bushes type of fear. But at this point, I'm old. Like, I'm 41 years old, and I'm still learning and growing. Every decade of my life, I'm like, holy cow, like, does this ever end? But with communication with people, especially when it comes to love, like, I want to be real, and I want my partner to be real and to be able to express whatever he's experiencing and feeling. Mm-hmm. And for us to be able to do it from a space of compassion. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat it, but I do. I want to be compassionate and gentle about it, mm-hmm. and authentic and honest at the same time, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
So with I love you, I think it can mean, like, I'm big on disclaimers. So if it is an I love you situation, and I didn't have this with my partner, like, I was perfectly fine. I think he said it first. And I felt the same way. So I authentically said, oh, I love you too. And that's awesome. And whatever. But say that is the situation like you're describing. My disclaimer may be like, I want you to know that I don't expect you to say this back to me, but I love you. Mm-hmm. I feel that way about you. And doing it because that's genuinely what I feel. Mm. And you can do with it what you want. And I respect, because that's it. Mm. I think we go into conversations expecting too much of the other person.
Yeah, or perhaps not, you know, you say your piece, but then you're looking for the next
validation.
Yeah, rather than, like you said before, like bringing it back to yourself and accepting whatever feeling it is and just being honest.
Totally.
And just like, well, that's on the table. That's how I feel. I'm not saying it because I want a specific reaction. You don't have to feel the same way, but I just got to be honest.
And I don't want our relationships to be built on a platform of me hiding things.
No.
Like, so you need to know this about me. I'm falling in love with you.
Correct. There you go. So now we've just gone on to relationships advice as well. Getting it all in this podcast. We've talked about food. We've talked about singing. We've come up with new franchises, and now we're giving relationship and dating advice for people that are falling in love. So, I mean, what more could
you need a TV show?
We do. I need to tag this on. It's training, nutrition, lifestyle, singing, entrepreneurial ventures, advice.
This is all life coaching. Yeah,
it is. But it is, and I think actually, on a serious note, though, you're right, Kori, because it all interlates, and the reason why I promote, you know, my business as I do, and I say, you know, it's everything: training, nutrition, and lifestyle. And I think, again, that lifestyle is the most neglected factor. And I always say to people, my clients, I live and breathe this. I say, look, what happens in your lifestyle is a direct correlation to your success with your training and nutrition. And people go, yeah. And I go, no. Well, think about this. When you have, you know, you're feeling really great, you know, generally, are you more adherent to your nutrition? Yes, right? You eat better foods, everything's better, you train well. Sometimes you have a bad day, you train really well because it's frustration. Right? But people, they neglect it all the time. And it's like, I think when you spoke to Amanda Rizzo and Eric Helm, Omar, like, and we talk about, you know, when we do these nutritional pyramids, or when we look at something, it's like, well, let's start with behavior and lifestyle. And it blows people's minds when I do these master classes and they turn up and they're expecting to learn about training and nutrition. The first thing I knock out is behavior and lifestyle. And everyone's like, what has that got to do with it? Tell me about macronutrients. And I'm like, no, because first of all, you've got to identify these factors. So I think it's all interrelated. And I think people need to understand that more. Especially as we've talked about, Kori, if this is going to be a lifestyle, you know, it's a diet lifestyle, it's sustainable, flexible, enjoyable, it's however you want to put it. But again, it's got to tick these boxes. And we need to, as you've said so many times throughout this podcast, we need to acknowledge what we feel and what we think. We need to accept it. We need to get that out, and then we can move forward and progress.
Very well articulated. The one thing we didn't talk about was all of these human needs that we have, and lay those out for people. But it'll have to wait.
Yeah, part 2. See, there we go. We left him with a cliffhanger. But, before we do go, Kori, for people who want to find out more about yourself and what you do, connect with you, where are the best places to find you?
I wish that I could say I'm awesome on social media. I'm working on it.
Oh, aren't we all?
But I am on Instagram. I'm on the gram. I'm so out of social media that I just learned about the gram, like the phrasing, the gram.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
I'm so cool now. I can say the gram.
You can.
My address is the Diet Doc Life.
There you go.
Or you can just search my name. I do have Dr. Kori Propst, but don't look for that. Because I don't post there. I'm on Facebook. I do a lot on Facebook. You can just search my name.
Yeah.
Reach out to me. Feel free to email me. It's Kori, Kori, @thedietdoc.com. And then the website is a wealth of information. It's thedietdoc.com. And then we also have a YouTube channel. It's The Diet Doc Weight Loss. And then we also have a podcast. So Dr. Joe and I host a podcast. You mentioned it. Did you mention it in the very beginning? Maybe this was before we started recording, but
it was, yes.
It's the Diet Doc Life Mastery podcast, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, all of the places that you would typically find podcasts.
Oh, yeah. And I'm back that up because it's one of my favorite podcasts. I'm always on that. And as always, I'll put all those links.
Awesome.
Those listening and watching in the description below so they can make sure that they follow up, and do follow up, guys. If you've got an interest in this area, it is a wealth of knowledge. I definitely use it as a tool and a resource regularly for myself and for my clients.
Thank you, Alex. That's awesome.
No, that's all right. It gives a lot of clarity and credibility, I think, because some people, they need to see that from multiple sources and businesses and people who are sort of a bit more well-developed within the industry. So, Kori, thank you for the chat. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. It's been entertaining. And I do look forward to a round 2. So thank you again for joining us, Kori.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'll talk to you soon.
Really will. And guys, as always, until next time, stay fearless.